Awakening is often framed as a moment of insight, a realization about the nature of self or reality that arrives through understanding. While insight can open a doorway, it is not the awakening itself. Awakening as it is lived is a whole-body remembering. It is not something the mind accomplishes, but something the body gradually allows. From a somatic perspective, awakening unfolds as the nervous system reorganizes around safety, presence, and contact. What is remembered is not new information, but an original orientation to life. A way of being that existed before chronic bracing, vigilance, and self-override became necessary. This remembering is rarely dramatic. More often, it happens quietly and incrementally. Sensations that were once overwhelming become tolerable. Stillness that once felt unsafe becomes inhabitable. Attention settles inward without collapse or dissociation. Through repeated lived experience, the system learns that it can remain present without mobilizing, guarding, or proving itself. Awakening, in this sense, is not an escape from the body but a return to it. Early awakenings are often accompanied by clarity that feels spacious yet disembodied, awareness without full contact. While this can bring relief, it remains incomplete until the body participates. Insight must descend into sensation, breath, posture, and impulse, so that awareness can be lived rather than visited. As the body remembers safety, identity loosens naturally. Effort, striving, and control soften, not because they are dismantled, but because they are no longer required. Presence becomes sustainable instead of fragile. Awakening stabilizes not through understanding, but through embodiment. What remains is a way of being that can stay, felt, lived, and grounded in the body itself. The mind plays an essential role in awakening, but it cannot complete the process by itself. Insight can reveal what is true, name patterns, and shift perception. Yet awakening is not only a change in understanding. It is a change in how life is met. Without the body's participation, awakening remains partial and unstable. The mind works through meaning and recognition. It can see through false identities, understand non-separation, and articulate profound truths. The nervous system, however, does not reorganize in response to insight alone.
It responds to lived experience. When awakening occurs primarily in the mind, the body often continues to operate from older survival strategies. Bracing, vigilance, urgency, or withdrawal remain intact even as understanding deepens. This creates a familiar split. Clarity without ease, awareness without stability. Stillness may be understood as natural, yet feel unsafe. Presence may be recognized as true, yet difficult to sustain. In these moments, the issue is not resistance to truth. It is the body's need for safety. The nervous system is organized around what has been necessary to survive, not around what makes conceptual sense. Because of this, seeking more insight rarely resolves the gap. More reflection or inquiry cannot convince the body to relax its protective patterns. Awakening stabilizes only when the nervous system learns, through repeated experience, that it can remain present, without mobilizing or guarding. When the body is included, awakening becomes inhabitable. Sensation, breath, posture, and impulse begin to reorganize gradually. Presence no longer depends on control or ideal conditions. Awareness becomes something that can stay, rather than something that comes and goes. The mind can point toward awakening, but the body must be able to live it. Only when insight is embodied does awakening move from a mental realization into a coherent, grounded way of being. Separation is often described as a psychological belief or a philosophical idea, the sense of being apart from life or others. From a somatic perspective, separation is not primarily a belief. It is a nervous system organization that is lived in the body long before it is named in thought. When the nervous system organizes around threat or unpredictability, contact narrows. Attention pulls away from sensation, muscles hold readiness, and breath becomes shallow or managed. The body orients toward control rather than relationship. This physiological stance creates the felt experience of being inside, while life feels distant or out there.
Separation, in this sense, is embodied rather than imagined. These patterns are adaptive. Distance, vigilance, and self-monitoring once protected the system from overwhelm, intrusion, or loss. Over time, however, what began as protection becomes identity. The nervous system continues to hold itself in readiness even when danger is no longer present. Separation becomes the baseline state through which life is met. In this condition, connection may be desired yet feel unsafe. Intimacy can register as exposure. Stillness may feel like loss of control. Presence can feel vulnerable rather than nourishing. The system maintains a subtle guarding that interprets openness as risk. This is how separation persists, not as a belief in difference, but as an ongoing physiological stance. Understanding non-separation does not automatically resolve this pattern. Insight alone rarely softens a nervous system trained to guard. The body continues to respond as if distance is required, even when the mind knows otherwise. As safety is gradually restored through lived experience, separation begins to dissolve somatically. Muscular holding releases without effort. Breath deepens. And sensation becomes more tolerable. Attention widens naturally, allowing contact without collapse or defense. Separation ends not through correcting a belief, but when the nervous system no longer needs to protect against contact. What remains is a quiet, stable sense of belonging that no longer has to be maintained. Mental awakening can feel significant. Insight arrives, perception shifts, and long-held beliefs about self and reality loosen. There may be clarity, spaciousness, and relief from familiar psychological struggle. Yet when awakening remains primarily mental, it is incomplete. Without embodiment, awakening becomes something that is understood rather than lived. The illusion arises when insight is mistaken for integration. The mind recognizes truth, but the nervous system continues to operate from older patterns of protection, vigilance, and control. Awareness expands, yet the body remains organized around threat.
This creates a subtle tension. Clarity without ease, presence without stability. In this state, awakening is often conditional. Spacious awareness may be accessible in quiet or controlled environments, but difficult to sustain in relationship, responsibility, or uncertainty. The system can touch stillness, then quickly lose it when activation increases. Awakening becomes something visited rather than inhabited. This gap is frequently explained away. Discomfort is reframed as ego resistance, activation as purification, and instability as a necessary stage of growth. While these interpretations offer meaning, they often bypass a simpler truth. The body has not yet learned that it is safe to remain open. The nervous system is not opposing awakening. It is protecting itself. Mental awakening can also reinforce disembodiment. By identifying with awareness alone, sensation and emotion may be subtly avoided. The body's signals are overridden in the name of clarity or transcendence. Over time, this deepens the split between knowing and living. An awakening emerges that appears coherent conceptually, but lacks grounded stability. Embodied awakening unfolds differently. Insight is allowed to descend into sensation, breath, posture, and impulse. The nervous system is given time to reorganize through lived experience rather than interpretation. As safety increases, presence no longer depends on control or withdrawal. Awareness becomes inhabitable. The illusion of mental awakening dissolves when the body is included. What remains is not less clarity, but more capacity. Awakening shifts from a mental realization into a stable, lived way of being. To awaken through sensation rather than thought is to allow transformation to occur where experience actually lives, in the body, rather than only in understanding. Thought can recognize truth, name patterns, and describe reality. But sensation is where life is met directly. Somatic awakening does not reject the mind. It simply no longer relies on it as the primary vehicle for change. Sensation precedes interpretation. Before experience becomes a story or belief, it is felt as pressure, warmth, contraction, openness, or movement.
Awakening through sensation means allowing awareness to meet these experiences without immediately explaining, correcting, or escaping them. Attention shifts from observing the body to inhabiting it. When awakening is led by thought, awareness often remains abstract. Clarity may be present, yet grounding is fragile. Insight can arise without stability, and presence may disappear when activation increases. Awakening through sensation reverses this orientation. Awareness settles into the body, not to manage sensation, but to remain with it as it is. This process unfolds gradually. Sensations that were once overwhelming become tolerable. Impulses are felt without being acted on or suppressed. The nervous system learns through repeated experience that it can stay present. Safety is not reasoned into place. It is discovered somatically. As sensation becomes inhabitable, awareness stabilizes naturally. Presence no longer depends on quiet conditions or controlled environments. It remains available in movement, relationship, and challenge. Over time, identity reorganizes. Rather than anchoring in thought or insight, it forms around capacity and contact. The sense of self softens because it no longer needs to be held together by tension or avoidance. To awaken through sensation is to let the body become the site of remembering. Awareness no longer hovers above life, it moves through it. Awakening is often imagined as something to attain, an insight to reach, a state to sustain, or a realization that finally resolves the search. What this chapter reveals is quieter and closer than that. The gateway to awakening is not ahead of you. It has always been carried within the body itself. From the earliest moments of life, the nervous system has been shaping how experience is met. Long before ideas of self, meaning, or spirituality formed, the body learned how to orient towards safety, threat, connection, and withdrawal. These patterns were not errors. They were intelligent adaptations to what was required at the time.
Over time, these adaptations became default ways of being, quietly organizing perception, identity, and relationship to life. What is often experienced as separation is not a philosophical mistake to correct. It is a physiological stance the body learned to take. And what is often called awakening is not merely a shift in understanding. It is a gradual reorganization of that stance. As the nervous system learns that it no longer needs to brace, guard, or remain on alert, experience changes at its foundation. Presence becomes inhabitable. Contact becomes possible without overwhelm. Stillness becomes safe. This is why insight alone cannot complete the process. Understanding can point the way, but it cannot teach the body what safety feels like. The nervous system reorganizes through lived experience, through sensation, repetition, and regulated contact. Awakening stabilizes only when the body can remain present within it. Sensation is not a distraction from awakening. It is the doorway. Through sensation, the body remembers what the mind may already know but cannot enforce. That openness does not require collapse, and presence does not require effort. The gateway you have been seeking has never been hidden. It has been quietly present in breath, posture, impulse, and feeling all along. Awakening is not about leaving the body behind. It is about allowing the body to remember how to remain, and to live from there.